to go over a couple videos, guys. And while we do that, before we do that, we are going to start off with a word of moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer. For those sick and suffering, for those in and outside of this circle. And before we do that, we're going to sing a song, asking the Holy Spirit to come into this place. Into my heart, into my heart, come into my heart, Lord Jesus, come in today, come in to stay. Come into my heart, Lord Jesus. Silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, we're gonna go start off on a new video. We finished off with codependency, guys, and it was very powerful, impactful. We had a lot of feedback, a lot to say. A lot of people um, grew out of that with a knowledge of themselves, not knowing, now knowing, which is the whole mantra of what celebrative recovery is. We want for everyone in the mantra of uh, Barnabas Community Ministries is for awareness. And we're going to start off on a new video and just waiting for this new video to start.
What is codependency? And we've had conversations around this, but what's the difference between a healthy bond and dysfunctional codependency? Today, I want to unpack a little bit some of those characteristics we can fall into in counseling world. We'll call this a secure attachment, a healthy bond. Unhealth or enmeshment is where codependency can creep in. And what are some things that we can be aware of, some characteristics in this confusing topic as we continue the conversation around codependency? Welcome to Celebrate Recovery Official, a podcast that shares life-change stories, courage, hope, and leadership wisdom, all centered around the Celebrate Recovery principles and the Beatitudes from Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus is equipping us. He's giving us tools to face our hurts, hang-ups, and habits so that we can walk in the newness of life the way He intended. The reason He died for us so that we can walk in that fullness of life under His power, so that we can have healthy relationships with Him and with other people. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I'm the Global Field Director with Celebrate Recovery, and welcome back. It's so good to have you, and thank you for taking the time to give us a review and sharing this podcast with other people so that we can get the word out about Celebrate Recovery. So actually, I decided to record this coming out of the summit. This came up a couple times with people just passing by. Hey, love the podcast. Hey, do you have any ideas of topics? And this one came up a couple times, maybe a few times, around codependency. I know we've done some podcasts, even some life change stories around this, but it's a topic we could talk about over and over and over again. But what some of those characteristics and what's some things that I can be mindful of and aware of as I'm doing my inventory to kind of, as we look at those columns, the my part, of course, but also some of those the damage and the effect. And I actually talked a little bit about this in the abuse panel, and probably do a separate podcast on this. But some of those, another way we could refer to character defects, and it doesn't make them any less more important or for us to take responsibility. It's our protections, our defenses and our protections. You could lump those in with character defects. Sometimes, like, no, those are character defects. Yeah, they're character defects, but they form out of protections and defenses to stay alive. And as I mentioned in the abuse workshop, while I can hold that space of the good reasons why protections and defenses might be there, it doesn't mean that those need to stay my protections today. I applaud the little kids that develop strategies to stay alive, and to keep their family system working and functioning as best they could. I hate that they had to do that, but I'm glad they figured out a way to walk in those protections, and those are to be applauded. However, sometimes when we look at the adult man and woman now that have walked through some things and they're on the healing journey, we come to that realization, while the protections made sense when we were kids, and we're not to blame for that responsibility was put on our shoulders, they do become our responsibility today in how we move forward. And so that's the my part. And so when I'm talking about protections that we can develop, it's good to be mindful and kind of think of these through character defect lens. We'll do some more podcasts around character defects, but let me just get out right out of the gate, just understanding the difference between codependency, or a healthy bond, you could say. Some in my circles will call it secure attachments. And there's some characteristics that we again, this is a topic we could talk about a lot. There's a podcast I did, maybe 7 months ago on this, you could find on this channel, but probably worth going back and watching that. But what are some of or listening to that? One of the characteristics that we can develop, maybe starting out with just defining some of those characteristics that we can develop. For a codependent, there's kind of this space of excessive emotional reliance. You could even say psychological reliance, mental, physical reliance on a partner. Now, a lot of times we'll see codependency. It's breed out of addictions. You'll see it where somebody is maybe they've gone through a significant illness, and we can see that. So anyway, you'll see the support in this, and they can kind of get out of balance. So what happens in codependency, and I'm oversimplifying this, is we can actually lose our sense of self, because our priorities, maybe for good reasons, trying to stay alive in the midst of living with an addict or someone who's been very sick, we lose our sense of self, and our prioritizing, our priorities move and shift toward the needs of the other person over ourself. And here's what's interesting about this conversation is sometimes I'll see people genuinely have a healthy bond, and they will love each other well, and they think if they care for their partner and they're hurting, and they sit with them in their pain, that they're being codependent. Please hear me clearly. That is not codependency. That's called a healthy bond, and that's part of the reason for this conversation. But it's where we lose our prioritizing of taking care of ourselves over the other person. And so in general, codependency is this condition. It's a behavior that will develop a defense, a protection, a character defect, whatever you want to call it, where we as an individual have difficulties maintaining health and really maintaining a balance in our relationship, so it gets out of bounds, and now we're in a pretty kind of imbalanced place. So understanding those differences is important. But when we're in a healthy bond, where you might call it a secure attachment, this is where we have a healthy interdependent relationship. Now, what's interdependent? You have independent, you have dependence, and you have interdependence. If we're being honest, there's times in our life when we are dependent on each other. If I am in a bad spot and I'm your sponsee, I'm dependent on you, and that's why I'm reaching out to you, not to rescue me, but to be with me. And sometimes we get that even dependence a little bit out of whack, but I'm independent. I can take care of myself. I can be independent. And healthy interdependence is I take care of me, you take care of you. But I also know this healthy interdependence in a secure bond or healthy bond is knowing that I'm going to be there for you and you're going to be there for me. Not to manage you, not to rescue you, not to take care of you over me, but to be there for me. It's a question in our counseling training that we'll ask. We learn in our training that in a distress, a lot of times you'll see in relationship, there's this common question that's being asked. And it's the question, are you there for me? Are you there for me? And if I can get a resounding yes, that's a very secure place, not at the expense of yourself, but there for me to support me in a healthy interdependent relationship. And that healthy interdependent relationship, the fruit of that is where both of us feel valued. Both of us feel understood. Both of us feel supported. Notice the both of us. So each of us can maintain a sense of self while we're connected to serving and loving on the other. Now just let that sit in your body for a second. Where have you gotten out of balance, where you've not maintained a healthy sense of self while you're connecting and serving the other? See how it can get us out of whack and we can become enmeshed. But in this healthy bond, there's this relational dynamic where we're able to form strong, healthy, trusting bonds with others. That's the big difference compared to the codependency, right? We have difficulty maintaining healthy balance. In a healthy bond or secure attachment, we're able to form those strong, healthy, and trusting bonds. And trusting is a key word to that. If I know you're going to be there for me, and knowing in turn, I'm going to be there for you, that's where you have a healthy bond. In fact, even in a trusting, healthy bond, I can get to a space where I can ask you what I need and know that you'll be there for me as best you can. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, but overall, and even when we get it wrong, we repair it and move forward. But that's important. Just kind of coming out of the gate, kind of understanding the differences between that codependency or enmeshment compared to just a healthy bond or secure attachment. So one of those things is the lens of emotional dependence. And I use that word dependence because sometimes we are dependent on, when I can't hold my arms up, I'm dependent on you to be there for me, knowing that it's going to be reciprocated back because we love each other and we're going to help each other. We support each other. I feel valued right now in knowing that there's going to be a time when you need to feel valued or understood or supported. So, but emotional dependence is one of those components. And in healthy enmeshment or codependency, this is where we feel we can become emotionally dependent on the other person. And that's where we get our validation. That's where we get our self-worth. Now, just think about your relationships. Is there anyone in your life where you become emotionally dependent on the other person for that validation and self worth. So what that can look like, if you're thinking action tendencies that I'll see in myself, uh, just the signs of neediness or this fear of abandonment, tendency to control or to be controlled by the other person. Ugh, that just doesn't sound good at all, does it? That's where that enmeshment, that's where codependency starts to creep in. But secure attachment or a healthy bond is where we're emotionally independent, yet we're connected with one another. There's this healthy sense of self worth. I know I have value. I know I am loved. I am supported. I am understood. And yet I can be emotionally independent. I'm working my recovery with the Father. And yes, emotionally independent is where we can be comfortable with independence, but we understand and can be comfortable with interdependence. And this is so important. This is where we get codependency a little bit mixed up, where we lose sight that healthy independence and healthy interdependence through that healthy bond is where we're able to give and receive support with confidence, with security, and knowing it's the absence of that fear of abandonment that we might have. So sometimes emotional support that's needed, but if it's a one-way street and I'm doing it so I feel valued and loved, I'm going to give you all the emotional support that you need, but it's so that you'll love me and I'll feel valued. Then we're in a place of enmeshment. A secure place is able to give and receive without, if I don't do this, you will, my biggest fear is you'll leave me. That's just a bad spot. And so focusing on the emotional side of that. But then you have boundaries, and boundaries are an important part of this equation. I'm going to take a super quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the difference between boundaries in a enmeshed or codependent relationship versus a secure bond, healthy bond. Stick with me. I'll be right back. We'll continue the conversation. Hey, friends, we're so excited to see
I
that
think we
the
should
online
stop it
community
now,
is growing.
so we can take questions, we can take comments, because we're almost out of time. Wow, that was powerful. Jeff, you can go ahead.
I'm so sorry I was speaking all this time. This went very well with our vocabulary words and the difference between codependency and healthy bonds, and also the state of where you want that relationship to be when you are empathetic to see both parties. You know, you want them to be interdependent or dependent, where it's not just myself that's receiving the glitz, glamour, perks, or whatever. All of us, because at the end of the day, God is a God that does not withhold um, blessings. So in our families, we do not withhold from one another, and that's just should be. And I say should be. That should be the basis. But as it may, that is why we have a lot of institutions, a lot of jails, and a lot of deaths. So I pray for our brothers and sisters as we understand this intricate part where it speaks about these subjects, so that we may be enlightened to be aware of what to do in a positive manner and with love. So this is a good question, guys. What is your take?
Wow.
I would say that it's important to know the difference between codependency and healthy bonds, because
And I'm so sorry. Did you get the part? Were you in when they were speaking about the part about uh, uh interdependent, independent?
no, I didn't hear that part.
Oh man, it's wonderful, powerful. Okay, I'm sorry.
Can
I'm
you
sorry for cutting
reiterate
you off.
about the healthy bond? I mean, interdependent.
I'd rather the video. Tell you the truth. My
Okay.
mother, pastor does happen to have access to where if you want to recap, you
Okay.
can on a website or logging in.
Um,
Okay.
I can share with her
Okay.
from what the note that I took, interdependent relationship is, it's not to manage the person or take care of the person,
Uh-huh.
or for the person to take care of you or manage you,
Right.
but for the person to be there for you, or you be there for the person while the person is managing his or her life in a healthy way, and you are managing your life in a healthy way, and then you
Right.
come together and you connect, and then you become interdependent. You depend on each other. So
Okay.
emotionally, you know, um, you get your validation in a healthy way, you know.
Right.
Um, so without being controlled or
Mhm.
without being manipulated.
Right. And that's
Okay.
what creates the healthy bond, the
That's what
interdependent.
The
creates the
healthy
healthy
relation,
bond.
healthy bond. Perfect. I'm
Okay,
so
I
glad you
understand.
caught that because
Yes.
she broke it down. It was very intricate, as you can see, and
Yes.
it it it's an eye opener because it helps on both parties to understand where they're at
Okay.
and to understand how much of a harmonious blend it must be between both parties for it to be a success. It's
Right.
tough. It's not easy.
Understood. Okay. I
And that's
definitely
in
I
general,
wrote
in a
those notes
sense.
down.
Oh, sorry.
I said I wrote those notes down. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
And as I'm thinking about it, and that's in a sense what a natural motherly instinct. That's what's built in women naturally, I think. That
I agree.
uh, 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 that type of yeah, you know what I mean? Because you always that the whole definition it depicts a mother trying to bear a child and raise them up so that they could fly off. You know what I mean? And be able to fly and be successful. But
Right.
um that's just me sharing. Thanks for letting me share. Anybody else want to share anything or any more? Since you got some more understanding about that, I believe. Um,
Sister Jojo.
okay. Anybody else would like to share on what they received from our codependence? Because in about a minute or so is our halfway
So
mark of the hour.
um we I just want to go over, you know, the codependence. One of the characteristics is excessive emotional reliance on a partner or family member. So the support.
Can I ask you the one question? When you say emotional reliance, does that mean you have a bottled up feeling, and depending on that person that is singled out in the household, depending on if that person makes you feel happy once you release that emotion or not, depicts on how you feel or how you feel about your day or yourself? Is that
uh,
emotional reliance?
um,
So somebody who knows that you're the person that's gonna try to help them no matter what, and they rely on you. So it's like, like they're emotionally attached to how whether, they feel like you're gonna help them feel better when really you're not. They make you feel like you're the hero, but you're really, you're enabling them. You're not
exactly,
really
exactly.
fixing the situation.
Okay.
And not only that, it's like, that you that person, become very overwhelming
So
because
in essence, there's very I'm glad that they did this video. I mean this scenario of uh codependence because there's many branches of what codependence look like. And I believe this is one of them. And I'm very grateful for the class. Thanks for letting me share.
thanks for sharing. I, this is very important when it comes to the excessive emotional reliance on someone or family member. While, instead of putting that same reliance on God, who is the one that can guide you out of that place, that excessive emotion that you are going through. Because what happened is the person that you are relying on is, going through his or her excessive emotional, you know, issue also. So when you take your, load and you release it on a person instead of, surrender that load onto God to find your way out by giving you instruction through His Word, um, so you can find your way out, um, then what you are doing is damaging your own self or even the other person, by, causing much more stress that could even, um, cause harm to their emotion or their own, physical body, or even crush their spirit, because, you don't have, really what it takes to solve anybody's problem. God have what it takes to solve all the problems. So, codependency is not just for, you know, for partner, but also for families, for friends. So, I believe it is very important, for us um, to understand, how to live interdependently. Um, so we see here that, the excessive emotional reliance, cause the person to be out of balance. The support is out of balance. You lose your sense of self. In that state, you lose your identity. So when you lose your identity, you're not living, you are existing. So it is important, to work on the steps that can, grant you access to self again. Thanks for letting me share. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to share?
Blessing. Um, I
Blessings.
like, I like, yeah, good morning, everyone. I like the word you say that when somebody losing their identity, they're not living, so they
Mm-hmm.
are existing. Which means that's very powerful to me because there's a big difference, like you're living, you are existing. So to me, I don't know. So when you say I'm living in joy and peace and everything.
Amen.
But
That
when
is true.
you're living in righteousness and truth of God. So this is very powerful to me. you are you are not living. You just existence of, but you're on the earth. You just exist. But that person who's just walking, there's nobody there. It's just a clothes that cover that person or he or she. But that's very powerful to me, in the code, dependency and codependency. And then when, sometimes that's what it is when, sometimes someone or a partner or family or a friend and try to, like you said, take over. Sometimes the person that try to take over, they can't even take care of themselves. And that's when the chaos happens.
Mm-hmm.
They want to
The
take
person try
control.
to
They want
control.
to take over. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And then but they don't know they are destroy the people that surrounding them, people around
And,
them are being destroyed.
and
I
that's
think
why
that is one. Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
I just wanted to pigtail what you said because that's why I said earlier that it's almost like a mother nurturing type of identity of what um, it was a word before that we were breaking down in the
Talking about
video.
a healthy bond.
Healthy bond. See, and what you're speaking of also is basically what God is in the Bible wanting all of us to basically get from. If we was to strain it as a juicer, that's basically in a nutshell he wants us to have a type of healthy
Mm,
bond type relationship so that
mhm,
amongst family, amongst each other, like you just stated, you would have an essence like we all searching for to be having a search of Christ and being whole and feeling without needing a codependent to feel whole. But if you have that healthy bond within itself where that person doesn't need to feel like as if they're used. And in essence, it feels like as if you're draining them, and then that
exactly.
person is draining the other. But if you have a cohesive relationship where it's a healthy bond, where that person is not manipulating you, saying words like, "What do I got you here for next to me?" It's not like that. It's a partnership. It's a healthy bond. Like, okay, it's not just benefiting you, it's benefiting all of us.
All of us, yes.
And I've said
Yep,
that a lot because that's what God wants us, in essence, to start practicing in our homes. Thanks
exactly.
for letting me share.
No, you say it right, Jeff. Absolutely, you say it right. And that's why, this day it's I'm not saying difficult, it's possible with Christ. And then it's kind of weird to find a healthy bond in family. And
You know what? Man, you're addressing it real nice. It's just hard in society.
yeah,
You're humble in your words. It's hard for a
yeah,
man that is in church to
yeah,
pick out a
yeah,
virtuous woman because they are trained, but then they are like 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 when you're putting a powder on a baby's bottom, like
yeah,
they're trained. in the street or at home by their mother or their auntie to what to
Mm.
look out for in a man. But at church, they're powder trained on what qualities you're supposed to look for in a man.
Yeah,
But in
they masculine.
reality, amongst their peers, amongst women in general, they judge each other by those statistics, by what
Okay.
was in the streets. So when a
Okay,
man is
so
coming out that's Christian and has good noble sense and wants to do right by a person or wants to take leadership in her home, now we're having a word where they're speaking of saying that they're very, very